Let's look at sketching on things other than our axis planes. Here we've created an additional plane, and it makes sense that we could select our sketcher icon and sketch on that plane. And we can select to maybe draw a little circle here. Okay, and let's exit Sketcher. Okay, we see our little sketch here kind of hovering in space on that plane that we used to create it. If this plane were to move, let's pull it out a little bit farther and then hit Update. Our sketch moves to be on that plane because this is the support for this plane, or for this sketch. Now let's sketch on one of the flat surfaces here of our solid. Let's select Sketcher icon, and now let's start hovering over things. You'll see that as we hover over things that are not planar, they don't highlight. Only the things that are planar highlight. So it's kind of easy to figure out what's a legal support for a sketch. Legal supports are things that highlight. And they all, of course, must be flat. So here we'll draw a little circle here. We'll exit Sketcher. And now that sketch is on this face. Now, if I were to change that face, let's double-click this pad and go into the sketch for this pad. So that's this face right here. If I move this out this way and exit Sketcher and say OK, and then hit Update, that face moved out, and of course that is the support for the sketch, so the sketch moved with it. Now if we make a pocket or remove material from that sketch, and let's reverse direction and let's make that go in just a little bit. We'll make it go in about 16 millimeters, and we'll say OK. Now remember that pocket is based on the sketch, and the sketch is on this support. So if I change the support and I were to move this line in a little bit, so let's move it back to where it was, and we'll exit Sketcher and hit Update, we see that it's still 16 millimeters in from wherever the sketch is located. Okay? Now one of the things we have to be careful of is if we were to ever change this so that the hole was not completely covered by this face. So let's try that now. Let's double click this and we'll select to go back into the sketch, and now let's pull this down a little bit. And as I pull it down, it's not going to cover the hole now. Now if I exit Sketcher and say OK and hit Update, oh, so now the entire pocket is not covered by that face, but at least part of it was. Now let's take a look at if we can sketch on things that are not solid and not planes. You know, I've already created a few things here in this model for you. I've created some surfaces. We haven't learned how to do surfaces yet, but eventually you will. Let's select the Sketcher icon and let's sketch on. And again, as you hover your mouse over a surface that's curved, it doesn't highlight. Only flat surfaces highlight. You can select a flat surface and we can draw on there. I'm always drawing circles because they're probably the simplest item to draw quickly. And let's draw a pad now. And the pad, we can make it come up this way and say OK. So we can draw, let me unhide that surface sketch there. So we drew a sketch on a surface. Over here we've drawn sketches on planes and on faces of solids. Okay, here let's talk about drawing multiple sketches on the same support. Okay, we'll use this as our starter Catia model for that. and I'm going to draw on this face here with a sketch. So I'm going to select Sketcher, and I'm going to come over and select this face. It's a planar face. And I'm going to draw a little sketch on it, just a simple little rectangle. Here we go. So there's my rectangle. I get out of Sketcher, and let's not make a pad or anything out of it yet. We have it here. Now let's go to Sketcher, and let's sketch on that same planar face again. Let's select it, and let's make a little circle over here. Okay. So now if you see in the specification tree, we actually have, of course, our original pad based on its sketch, but we have the circle is sketch 3 and the rectangle is sketch 2. Okay. Now if we want to, we can move this sketch around and this one stays put. These are two different sketches. If I double click this one, I am now in this sketch and I can change it. And if I double click this one, I'm now switching back and forth, and you'll notice the underline here. When I double click a sketch, it's underlined. That's called the work object underline, and to tell you which sketch is active. Okay. Now let's get out of Sketcher. Now because we have these icons for sketch-based features, I'm going to make a pad, and I must now select a sketch to make a pad from. I can't select both of these. I can only select one and say OK. Well, let's make it a little smaller. There we go. And say OK. Now let's unhide that sketch so we can still see it there. Let's make another pad out of this sketch, and let's make it a little bit longer and say OK. Now if we wanted to add something to this sketch, let's go into this sketch and let's add another rectangle, say here. When we exit Sketcher, remember we have a sketch-based feature called a pad that's based on this sketch. But this sketch contains two things. It contains two profiles. So as I exit Sketcher and hit Update, you'll see now that this pad here, which is pad 3, if I double click it and make it smaller, both of those are smaller because this pad is based on a single sketch. Okay? So there are times when you would like for these to both be the same height, but if you wanted them to be different heights, these elements would have to be in different sketches. Now there'll be a lot more to learn about sketches later, but let's take a look at just one more interesting thing about multiple sketches here. Let's take this sketch, which is the sketch for pad 2, and let's double click it, and let's drag it over here so that it actually overlaps this other sketch. And when we get out of Sketcher, then exit Sketcher and hit Update, we'll see that that solid is created with an overlap. So it was legal to overlap one sketch with another sketch, even if they're on the same sketch support. Now, let's double click that sketch again. Let's pull it back out. Put it back over here. Okay. And we'll say Update. There we go. Now let's go into this sketch, which is actually both of these profiles. So let's go into that sketch. There we go. Now let's take this sketch and let's overlap these two. And let's exit Sketcher. And you'll find that this causes an error. It turns out that that is not legal to do within a single sketch. You can't have overlapping closed profiles. So we get this series of warning messages, and we'll hit the undo button here, Control Z, and go back to a normal.